Ho, ho, ho! Merry Christmas, one and all. Seasonal greetings. We are here on the Cricket8 Podcast to give, so I was about to say to give out. We're not giving out anything. We're making our Christmas wish list for the new ICC chair, Jay Shah. But before all that, you already know how the Cricket8 Podcast works. We're here for the best in analysis, trading talk, who should you put your money on, etc., etc. You can't find it anywhere else other than Cricket8 Podcast. But listen, I'm Machel St. Patrick here at one half of today's podcast. And of course, it's the magician, Rob Barron.
That's what they call me. Hey, Mash, how's it going, mate?
I'm good, Rob. And listen, we're gonna get straight into it, Rob, because what I've got for today is 6 things. I wrote down my Christmas wish list for Jay Shah. Obviously, he's about to effectively run world cricket or have the majority say on world cricket. And I said, right, what 6 things would I want him to fix in the world game? In not just in 2025, but we'll say in going into the new year and going forward, what are my top 6 wish list items? Rob has no idea, people, what I'm about to pull out of the bag. The metaphoric. In fact, here's the bag, Rob. Here is, for the purposes of this, I've got my West Indies tote bag.
This is proper preparation, this is, mate.
So Rob doesn't know what I'm about to pull out of my West Indies tote bag for my Jay Shah wish list. Listen, number 1, Rob. Let's go right from the top and give people an indication of how serious this is. Number 1, I've just written down the ACU, the Anti-Corruption Unit. This, I don't know how much remit Jay Shah and the ICC have over it. Well, they should have a lot. But when I say the ACU, I would like them, and Jay Shah is at the head of the ICC, to get a better grip over corruption in the game. We've just seen in the last week, I think news came out, was it the Emirati players or something in the 2021 T10 in Abu Dhabi? I think it was about 8 of them who just got done for fraudulent behavior in the 2021 Abu Dhabi T10. And Rob was somebody who's got a kind of inside track on the betting industry. Is there any way to get control of corruption?
Okay. If you've got 6 things and we're doing half an hour, I'll try and keep this down to 5 minutes. But
5 minutes.
I could go all day, man. Like, you just sit back and put your feet up, right? The ACU is not fit for purpose. That's a fact, right? So currently, and I've spoken to guys that have been head of the ACU as it used to exist. I sat next to somebody who was very high up in the ACU, in a box at Lords when Mohammed Amir overstepped. So I go way back. Like, literally, he was there with his head in his hands the day before it came out in the papers, right? I've spoken to high-level people about this. I am on a board of integrity for one of the competitions, and I know how it should be run. How much I can say on this podcast with Jared lurking behind me with, crosshairs on my forehead and stuff, I'm not sure, but I'm going to say loads and then we'll see what happens, see how much trouble I get into. But basically, it's not fit for purpose right now.
Leave me out of it. Leave me out.
No, you, Machel, St. Patrick Hewitt, last time tried to stitch me up because you know I'm going to talk about this stuff, and now you're doing it again. So if I am found at the bottom of a river with concrete boots on, it is Michelle's fault, everybody. But it's not fit for purpose, and the reasons I've been given is because in my actual job, I report stuff, right? I report stuff to whoever I can report it to, and the company that I work for, Decimal, we provide lots of different stuff to do with cricket to people. Some of it is scoring, some of it is data, some of it is prices, to various people within cricket, and some of those people are bookmakers, some of those people are providers of stuff. For example, Betfair is a big organization, and we have stuff to do with that. We have a direct link to them, and we can say, look, we suspect that this is happening. I can't get into specifics, but there are certain times where I have watched games, you have watched games, Mash, where the betting market, anybody can watch a game, right? And they see a no ball or 5 wides and they go, this is bent because they've just lost their money. That isn't what fixing is. That is not what What we're worried about here, sometimes you get overs that go for 30. It's an extraordinary amount of cricket that goes on. It's not that. It's when the betting market, which has got millions of pounds in quite often of syndicate money and Indian bookmaker money, it goes, I'm telling you now that there's just about to be a boatload of runs, right? The run line is artificially inflated. It goes, I don't care that they're 75 for 6 with 2 overs to go. They're going to score 110, right? They're going to score 110. And if you want to argue with me, there's 20,000 quid there that you can bet, right? And then when you see the 5 wides, head high, no ball, you're like, okay, they're doing that on purpose. And just an example, just before we came on air, the Sri Lanka T10, question mark, that's going on at the moment, following straight on from the Abu Dhabi T10. These tournaments are not regulated properly. I looked at the two teams. There's not much in it, right? If I was pricing it up, I would have had one of them slight favourites, maybe 1.8 or something. The market makes this team slight favourites. Last night when the odds were there, no one had any arguments. They were slight favourites. When the game started, the bowling team was 1.18, right? 1.18 to win the match. I'm just going to confirm that. I'm pretty sure it's true. They hit a 4. The batting team hit a 4, which is usually a good thing off the first ball. And they drifted. It went to 1.1. So the market thought that this team that was slightly more than 50% to win was 85% to win by the time the first ball got bowled, and then 90% to win when the first ball went for a 4. I think they got 25 off 10 balls, and you could have as much as you want on the team that are doing really well at 9-1 to win the match, right? 1 in 10. That doesn't add up for me. Subsequently, it's rain loads and the match is off, so who knows what was going on there. But that is something in my head that should be investigated by somebody. Right? Me saying something here, I'm not saying anybody's cheating. I'm not saying anyone's fixing. I'm saying a multi-million-pound market when this team are 90% to win the game. What? They're 22 for 0 off 12 balls or so. Yeah, 12 balls, 27 for 0 off 14 balls. They're 10% to win the match, are they? Because they ain't in the 25 years of betting experience that I've got on cricket. That's not how that works. So I want that to be investigated by somebody. I'm not accusing anyone of anything. I don't know what was happening there, but that doesn't add up, right? It's a direct correlation. The market is meant to make sense. It's meant to go, if a batting team hits a 6, that's a good thing for the bats. I'm not having any argument that says it isn't. If a bowling team gets a wicket, normally it's a good thing for the bowling team. Not always, but a double wicket maiden, for example, is a good thing. And when markets are telling me that that isn't a good thing, I am raising flags all over the place. Now, as it stands, what the ICC do, and this is because cricket's got really greedy, ICC go, we can only control what we control, lads. So CPL, not under our remit. Bangladesh Premier League, not under our remit. We're not overseeing that. Tough. What do you mean there? What do you mean they haven't got an anti-corruption unit? We don't care. It's not our tournament. It's on every website to do with you, ICC. It's on all the streaming stuff. Anything I watch and see, and the scorecards are all over Cricinfo and everything. Somebody must be responsible for this stuff, Mash. But the problem is there's so much cash in the game. We've spoken about this loads of times. So much cash in the game. Anybody, without doing a fit and proper persons test or due diligence, can set up one of these leagues, from what I can see. Pay loads of money to people. Money is changing hands all over the place that we don't know about. We're only speculating here. But when the betting markets do not match up even slightly with the cricket that's being played, there must be a process that we can follow. And at the moment, I can advise clients, I can advise bookies and stuff, you shouldn't offer this. And they're saying, why? Are they cheating? And I go, I don't know whether they're cheating. With the information I've got, and I'm privy to, I see millions of bets flying through or whatever, I can tell you now, like, if somebody, if 50, if I was a bookmaker and I opened 300 new betting accounts in the morning, and every single one of those 300 accounts was having as much money as they could on one of these leagues on the first over to go for more than 10 runs, more than 11 runs, more than 12 runs, and then the first 2 balls were 5 wides, miles down the leg side, I would have question marks about that, right? Bookmakers can do it. In that situation, the bookmakers are meant to report it to the authorities. At the moment, no one knows who the authorities are. We can report it to the betting regulators and things like that. But nobody knows, in terms of the ICC say, well, we're in charge of, the World Test Championship and we're in charge of the World Cup, sure. But we don't have anything to do with CPL, BPL. They must regulate themselves. Nobody does regulate the match. So I know that's probably 15 minutes of the 30.
I was going to say, you take up but let me ask you this. Because actually it's personal what you said. So in a nutshell, then I've said that my wish list, my number one on my wish list is Jay Shah to get the ICC to get a control of this. Are you effectively saying that they can't, or they won't, or both?
As the current system that is in place, nobody is in charge of cricket right now. I want Jay Shah to be in charge of cricket and say all of these tournaments where our players, the guys that play international cricket who are contracted to their boards to play international cricket, if they're going away and playing in all these leagues that are on TV, have a big presence, loads and loads of money about, we must have somebody that is responsible for regulating it, or it becomes the Wild West, right? So as the current system stands, they can't or won't do it, probably both. But there must, for cricket to survive as something that we were talking about this last time. If you turn the cricket on and you're like, well, that's a load of nonsense, the integrity of the game disappears and people stop watching it. The punters will vote with their feet eventually, because nobody I know bets on any of these leagues because they don't trust the cricket is fair, right? Whether or not it is, they don't bet on it. So eventually that money will disappear from it. So that's an issue down the line. But what needs to happen is if there are a certain pool of players, and we all know who they are, that play international cricket, high level cricket, and they bounce from, you wait for the next 6 weeks when we've got 5 franchise tournaments happening concurrently. I'm just doing my work now for the availability for the Big Bash of all the players. They're all one of them's like, oh, I'm playing for West Indies, then I'm playing 3 games of this, then I'm going to the IL20 unless I get more money for one of the other ones. And they just bounce. At the moment, nobody cares, but eventually fans are going to get sick of this. Eventually punters are going to go, well, I can't bet on this tournament because I have no idea who's playing. And I have no idea whether they're trying. Someone needs to regulate it. So very briefly, to answer your question, cricket needs to be a bit more responsible for itself and stop thinking about pound and dollar signs just for a minute and sit back and go, this is great. Everyone's getting bucks right now. But where are we in 3 years if we just allow the Wild West to keep, firing guns and leathering hooch?
This brings me to the second thing out of my Jay Shah Christmas wish list. And you kind of alluded to it. We may not get through all 6 in today's show, which means there'll have to be a part 2. But the second one I've got is sorting out the T20 calendar, which effectively is part 2 of your answer, right? Jared and I have done shows about this. I'm sure Mega has touched on it. I'm sure you and Jared have touched on it. But my wish list is, and I don't think it will happen in 2025, but I'd like him to get it sorted in the first kind of stanza of his tenure as ICC chair. Some of these tournaments just have to go. Or if they're not going, the windows have to be so clear that we know that international cricket is always going to be on at such and such a point, and the T20 leagues have to run alongside each other at such and such a point. Realistic or not, Rob?
Okay. It is realistic, but there's a whole perfect world and real world argument. But there are things you can't do right now, because it's not fair to say you must play international cricket when your international side is playing, because a player can go, what, for £100 a day when somebody's offering me £10,000 to play in one game, right? That's not fair. So we understand why people do that. In my head, what is fair, and they should be able to do, is say, if you are playing in a tournament, you are not allowed to go and play in another one until the one you're playing is finished, right? That solves a lot of the problems. I think that's a fair rule, and I don't really think players could argue, because what's happening now is when we've got next month, when we've got the IL20, the PSL is going to kick in, the Big Bash will still be going on. What else is there? BPL's coming. Like, there's loads of them. And what happens is people, I'm literally doing the information right now, and on my list that you won't be able to see, I've got about 6 people for each team that are like, well, they're playing this. Some of the Aussie guys for the Big Bash, the ones that are playing the test, are going to play 3 Big Bash games. But then Akil, for example, is playing for the West Indies right now. He will miss the first Big Bash game. Then he plays some Big Bash games. Then he goes to the IL-20, I think it is, where he's got a contract. Assam Amir has got all sorts of stuff going on with his no objection certificate. He plays for a bit in that. Then the Pakistan League or whatever it is. Then he buggers off and plays in something else. It's an absolute fiasco trying to predict who's going to play for each team. So that's a fair rule, right? If you're playing in one of them, if you're saying I'm playing in the Big Bash, that's you, right? You're not allowed to go and play in 3 different franchise tournaments around the world. That's fair, right? The windows can be set. It's very difficult to say. The reason why the IPL is by far and away the best competition is because it's got its own window. Everybody is available to play in it, barring a little bit of crossover with some test matches. And everybody knows that's the big one, right? When there's 5 on at once in January, which there is, they all just go, well, who's paying me the most? Yeah, I'd love to have Christmas in Sydney, and I'd love to have New Year in Sydney. But if someone's saying I can go to Dubai for 2 days in the middle and get 50 Gs, I'm off. And at the moment, that isn't really free enterprise. That is just saying it's damaging the integrity of the game, because you're getting teams that are really good on paper. If you look at these Big Bash squads that I'm looking at right now, some of them are really good on paper, and then you go, okay, this guy, he's clearing off, he's in test, he's clearing off, and the people that replace them are not players that people want to watch. There are people with career strike rates of 110, and they are there to make up numbers, literally.
Yeah, my agent got a ring the other day saying that I might get a gig in January.
But yeah, that's it. Like they can have windows for these things, but then what do? Do you say, right, the PSL is not allowed to be on at the same time as the IPL? Well, that's not fair. You say, okay, we've got to protect our international cricket. I don't know how you do it. You can't say, right, you're only allowed to play internationals. Boards have tried to implement that because they say, all right, then I quit, I retire.
Yeah.
That opens another huge can of worms. So what can we do? Stop letting people play in multiple tournaments for multiple teams at once. If you're playing in the Premier League at football, right, they can look at football because it's successful. You're playing in the Premier League at football. You can't clear off on a Tuesday night and go and play in the Bundesliga because they've offered you, £500,000 to play. And you can't play. What you can do is you can play in the MLS in the off season. You're allowed to do that. So that's fine. I don't mind them playing for lots of different teams. I mean, look at Imran Tahir. What's he on now? Team number 65? And he was moaning the other day that he didn't get paid for one of them. I was like, mate, if I had 65 jobs and 64 of them paid me, I wouldn't be moaning about it. But I don't mind it. Like, have a look at football a bit. Like, football's a bit of a disaster, but at least I know who the players are that are playing for my team. If I support a team, I know which guys are playing for them. They have transfer windows. People are allowed to leave and people are allowed to be signed and all this. All of that happens in cricket anyway, but then you've got to stop this multiple teams within days and sometimes even the same day. Like, that's the bit that does my head in. And that is something that somebody like Jay Shah could implement. He could go, right, like we can see a problem here. We're not going to stop people earning money. We're not going to stop people doing this. And then there must be somebody, which might be him, that is responsible for the sheer volume of these competitions. And just saying, look, we've got 5 in January. So that's enough. Can't have any more. No more in January. January's closed. And do something about the sheer volume of them.
Well, listen, Rob, you've answered 2 of my wish list. On the other side of this break, I'm going to give you the other 2. So, ladies and gentlemen, don't go anywhere. We'll be right back after this short ad break.
Remember to support us by subscribing and sharing, but also signing up at cricket8.com, where live scorecards cover 8,000 matches a year with advanced visual details that tell you who is actually in front in the game.
So we're back for the second half of my Jay Shah Christmas wish list. Rob, recently, in fact, not recently, before Jay got the job, yeah, I call him Jay because obviously we're on first name terms, but before Jay got the job, there was a talk about his desire to implement, I don't know if he called it a test fund, but certainly some kind of pool of money to ensure that everybody playing test cricket, I think the figure that I saw bandied about was something like 10, I don't even know what it was, but it was some kind of pool of money to ensure that everybody who plays test cricket is reasonably remunerated to play test cricket. However, whatever that figure was, it was It was higher than what players get now, I think, but it wasn't anything in the grand scheme of things in the context of what you can make playing in, I don't know, 2 T20 games in a tournament or whatever it might be. So my next wish list is that Jay Shah leads a conversation in the ICC that forces TV money declining notwithstanding, which forces all of the 4 member teams to agree that there should be a separate pool of money to ensure that all players feel that playing Test cricket is worth their while. It will never be equivalent to T20 money, but I'm talking about the type of money that means that if you only play IPL, your domestic league, and maybe one other, you're pretty much set for the year. Can it work? Will it work? Do you ever see it happening?
Okay, let's break down those questions. I think it definitely can work. Will they do it? Don't know. Can I see it happening? Yeah, like I have a bit of faith. Like I've heard a lot about Jay Shah. I don't know the bloke like you do. I'm not best muckers with him, but it sounds like fair guy, loads of influence, knows the right people, has come up and has qualifications to get this job, right? It's not a nepotism thing. He's got the job because he's meant to be the best man for it. Now, what's wrong with saying, because the whole thing with Mohammed Amir, right, and he got put in prison for this, and he wasn't the only one that was guilty in his team, and we've subsequently seen, what happened to Asif and Salman Butt and all the rest of it. The argument then was, well, they're only getting paid a tiny amount to play this day of Test cricket. The Pakistan players are getting $50 a day to play. The England players are getting $5,000 to play the same match at the same place. So nobody can blame this teenager for listening to his captain and whoever he's been speaking to the night before if you're dangling down 200 times his daily match fee in front of him. He's got family, he's got people that he wants to help, all the rest of it, right? You can understand that argument. Nobody can condone cheating, but you can understand the argument. It goes back to the old ethical one. Would you steal bread to feed your family? Like none of us would walk into the supermarket and nick a loaf of bread now, but if we were all starving, then maybe we would, right? So what's wrong with having it so that if you play a test match, you get X? Doesn't matter who you play for. There's enough money in cricket. It's the stacking of the cash towards India first, then England and Australia, and then the rest get the rest, right? It sort of trickles down, and then people are fighting for the scraps at the bottom. If you want to have the integrity of the tour, and it works a bit like that in football, but they do things, parachute payments, they do things, they try and keep things fair. And and very importantly, if people bugger about financially, they have questions to answer. I don't know what the answers are going to be when Man City finally answer those questions, but if you do muck about, as Chelsea found out, Abramovich isn't there anymore, is he? If you do muck about, you must answer questions. And at the moment, if you muck about in cricket, nobody cares. So maybe they can say, we're going to get fixed fees in if you play ODI, test matches, or international T20s. This is what you get per game, per day, right? Because we need to keep the integrity of that product. Therefore, the best players must play in it. Otherwise, it's not the pinnacle of the game. So you've got to get enough cash to play in it. Yeah. Then we can say, right, if you are playing franchise cricket, and these are the tournaments that fall under the ICC umbrella, and you kind of get one per country, seems fair to me. IPL, PSL, Blast, CPL, BPL, whatever it is. And you go, okay, a percentage of your money that you get, whether it's 5% or 10% or something, 5%, it'd be bundles across the amount of tournaments we've got now. It goes into a pool, and that pool looks after cricket. And that means it helps fund.
You're talking about individual players' money.
Yeah, I'm saying if a franchise says to you, Sam Billings, who plays in 10 of them, we're going to pay you £10,000 to play on finals day, £500 goes straight into the pool, and that looks after players, injured players. It looks after players with issues when they finish cricket, players in hardship, players that have fallen by the wayside, ones that can't get in and can't afford to train. It brings up grassroots cricket, right? It helps the game. Stuff like it puts things in place that the West Indies doesn't have because India have got all the money, or that places in India don't have because other places in India have got all the money, whatever it is. Do you know what I mean? It's not communism. It's distribution of the wealth to keep the game going. I'm not qualified to talk about politics or communism, so I wish I hadn't said that word. But that seems fair to me, right?
I was thinking of enough jokes to start saying, but carry on.
Now stop trying to get me into trouble, Machel. I think it's that to me seems fair. It's like everybody's getting mega rich at the moment, and the owners have to contribute X. Right, if you want to have a tournament and have one in your country, fine. Like the Guyana one the other day. Like no, somebody said, right, this is going to be an integral part of the cricket calendar. I bloody hope not. I watched some of that. No one cares. None of the players play for their teams. Why am I watching Lahore playing Victoria and people that have never played for Hampshire before? Like, don't make any sense. If you want to do one of these tournaments, you've got to contribute to the pool, which looks after cricket. And it looks after cricket just as much as in Zimbabwe as it does in India. And I think that's the bit that cricket misses right now. What do you think?
I like the idea. Obviously, the issue that when you said it, the first thing that went through my head was someone's going to steal the money. Maybe not. Maybe not in every single territory, but that's the first thing that I thought of. Oh, yeah, I love it, but how do you control that money not getting stolen? But as a concept, I mean, okay, so, and actually it was funny enough, it was one of the things on my wish list, but we're not going to talk about it in detail. If I'm not mistaken, the IPL currently runs the policy of if an overseas player gets an IPL contract, 10% of that goes to the cricket board of that particular player. So I wonder if that concept needs to apply to every single league around the world. So arguably, because the IPL makes so much, maybe the IPL's one should be 20%, because it takes so much. And before people get in the chat and shout at me about saying that, but the IPL takes up what? Essentially the whole cricket calendar, not the whole thing, but you know what I mean? It takes up the majority of the cricket calendar. So is there an argument to say, Rob, that the IPL should be 20% or 15 at least for players back to international boards, and then every other league, whether it be 5 or 10%, and then would that create the pool? Would that then give those boards, particularly your New Zealands, your West Indies, Sri Lankas, etc., would that give them an extra pool of money that allows them to then increase the payment? Do you see what I mean? Do you do it that way?
Yeah. I like it. I think, as you said, the comments and therefore the universe would light up if you said it's 20% for the IPL and it's 5% for this tournament. Just say it's 10% for all of them, because in IPL it's going to be a hell of a lot more money than it is for the little ones. And I think that's fair. Like that's what cricket needs, a bit of fairness and a bit of like stop the money grabbing and start thinking about the integrity of the sport. And at the moment, no one's doing that in an effective way. Just to go back on the integrity thing, right? I am not the best person, like the best placed person in Britain to tell you about integrity of cricket in terms of the betting markets and stuff, but I'm bloody close. And I've never been asked by anybody that works for any integrity boards other than the ECN, who we have a direct partnership. I've never been asked for my opinion on anything. And when I've offered it, it's been like, well, we can't do anything about that. And we're talking about guys that have run the bloody ACU. They're not really interested in, or they're not interested in enough. And this is my experience and the experience of a lot of people I know that have got similar roles to myself. Some of us feel extremely strongly about trying to keep cricket clean, and no one asks us. So maybe they need to identify how they can clean up rather than saying, like, issuing broad statements. But in terms of the game being fair, that your idea is fine. Like it's much, but the thing is, Mash, like we're just thinking as if we are fair human beings that have got cricket's best interest at heart, right? And all we can hope is that the people running cricket have those two characteristics. They're fair and they want cricket to do well. Not they all want all of them and all their mates to make bank.
As much money as possible. Right. Let's end the show then with one last one. And initially I was going to talk about the World Test Championship, but we'll park that one. I'll just keep this one a bit more, I say simplistic, it's not. I'd like Jay Shah to grow the game. I'd like under his tenure, the game to grow. Now you can take that statement how you want, Rob, because in one sense that could mean letting Ireland play some test matches more often. I know they're very expensive to be held, right? That could mean making Netherlands, Scotland become full member test nations. That could mean the World Cricket League actually leading to legitimate promotion or something like that. Like just growing the game so that when we look at countries like at the top end, your Netherlands, your Scotland's, your PNG just got to a World Cup, Uganda just got to a World Cup, but what does their prognosis look like for the next 5 years? Like we may never see them at a World Cup again, for example. Like I'd like Jay to look at the world game and go, how do we make it profitable for people all around the world to play this game so that things like PNG making the T20 World Cup doesn't look like a random Father Christmas-like anomaly?
Okay, I'll try and answer that one quickly, which I will definitely struggle with. What they have to do is, Pavel Florin is your example, Romanian guy. I've met Pavel. He's an absolute gentleman. He really wanted to play cricket, and what he has done by himself is raise the profile of the sport in his country. And he goes around and he'll play in he played in the ECM when it went to Wimbledon, because he just wanted to get himself out there and put cricket on the map in his country. He had something to do with the Melbourne Stars for a bit. Like they may have let him be a net bowler. And with all due respect to Pavel, who's a wonderful man, he's a terrible cricketer. And for cricket to get better in Romania, it needs more of a profile. And he's out there getting his country the profile. He's like 45 years old or something. There's a guy called Daniel Weston, not the analyst guy, a different one, Aussie guy, extremely passionate about cricket, was living in Germany, realised there was plenty of people that wanted to play cricket in Germany, whether that's English and Australian expats or whatever. He set up a league. He's now in charge of the whole of the European Cricket Network. That is based purely upon his passion for the game. He wants the game to spread. So it is now, there are now, whatever they've got, 4 games a day, 320 games a year, all the way across Europe. Every country is being represented near enough. It's growing in little places like Gibraltar. Iceland have got a presence in cricket now. All of this stuff, right? That's great. You need somebody from the ICC to speak to somebody like him and go, let's help you raise the profile of the game. You're doing it with your passion and your charisma and your contacts. We've got absolutely boatloads of money, and we've got contacts at the very highest level of the game that can help with organisation, with grassroots. Because what you need is kids playing it, and because cricket thinks it's amazing, but if you break it down in terms of worldwide eyes on it, yes, it posts good numbers, but it's got India watching, right? So then you get into the billions for numbers, but it doesn't have an awful lot of countries playing it. And they've definitely made some steps in that direction, having games in America. Obviously, what they got wrong there was by having them on the worst pitches of all time that they made 10 days before the tournament. They didn't think that hard about it. They were like, if it's in America, it'll be fine. But you need to get it to the countries where it isn't, and you need to identify passionate people that want to grow it and help them do it with the infrastructures, networks, and cash. And I could keep answering, but it is Christmas and we do have things to do. And the guys have made an amazing thing of Jay Shah that they want to show you.
Is production going to show us this?
Shubbo and Rakshit have been making away. And what we were going to do is talk and say Merry Christmas for this little guy here and in his lovely Christmas suit. And we should have worn one of those each, Mash.
Yeah, we should have done. But listen, Rob, I've loved that. And for those of you watching live, and obviously those of you who are watching this on the replay, we don't purport to have the answers. This episode was not about trying to come up with the answers. It's just a wish list. And why don't you, having listened to this, or whilst you listen to this, get down in the comments below. Obviously, like the video, subscribe, share it, all of that. But get down in the comments below. What would your wish list for 2025 be? What do you want Jay Shah to do now he has stepped up as chair of the ICC? I've been Machel St. Patrick Hewitt. Rob Barron's been the magician. And we shall be back very, very soon for another episode of the Cricket 8 Podcast.
Remember to support us by subscribing and sharing, but also signing up at Cricket8.com, where live scorecards cover 8,000 matches a year with advanced visual details that tell you who is actually in front in the game.